Rebecca.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you. A hard act to follow. So I'm going to talk to us a little bit about the evidence base behind careers decision making, and to get us to think about perhaps why we need to think about things a little bit differently. But first of all, I just wanted to reiterate to everybody here why the passion for a diverse workforce. And it is not because we need more people going into the AHP professions. I think what's really, really important and never to lose sight of is the value of diversity within healthcare. And there is really, really good emerging evidence that diverse teams produce the best outcomes, that diversity are more innovative, diversity equates to imagination, visionary, change management approaches as well. So I think what we have to really think about is that diversity in itself enhances outcomes. And it also means that we're much more likely to have a population that's willing and wanting to serve the diverse populations of London. So, for example, one of the boroughs that I was involved with Brent not long ago in one of their community scoping review is that 65% of the Brent population comes from a BME background. Yet, as somebody told me, they've only ever seen one black occupational therapist that looks like them and sounds like them. So obviously, we need to understand not only how, from our pipeline, how we attract the AHP professions, but also the community's view on what they want from allied healthcare professions as well. So I almost see us trying to dovetail those two aspects together. So sort of the credibility and relevance of the AHP professions to meet the future and diverse needs of London, which is changing as well from borough to borough. And I think as AHPs really need to be mindful of that within the process. But I think what we really need to think about is reimagining how we attract all people into the HP professions. So thinking really about what the evidence says and perhaps why we haven't acted upon the evidence base that's actually been in front of us. So in 2008, there was a very influential education report across different countries that looked at career decision making in primary care children from 7 to 17. And they asked it's a lovely creative project that asked people to draw their chosen professions. I think what's startling about this and what we as AHPs have not done, and this is where I think we really need to think, is that already at age 7, people know what they want to do. That is at age 7. So it sounds like going in at a lower 6 level or an upper 6 or even at age 16 plus could be too late, because also what we know from some of the evidence that people age 17 are less likely to change their mind from what it was from when they were 7 years old.
Anita, Anita, sorry to interrupt. Are you moving your slides forwards?
Has it not moved?
No, so I'd just say that everyone who is listening to the conversation, if Anita, you can say what slide you're on, and if you look at the bottom of your screen, those listening can move the slides along themselves. So Anita, if you just say at the beginning that you're on slide 3, 4, 5, and then people move it on themselves.
Thank you, Tom. Anyway, you don't need slides when you've got me anyway, do you? So, and I can't read my own slides because I haven't got my glasses on. So anyway, so we were talking really about this decision-making process, and a decision is different from a choice. And that's something we need to think about as well. Happens really when people are 7 years old. I think what's really clear from the evidence is that it's clearly shown that people are influenced by family members, by parents, by those that they actually see around them. And if they're not influenced by people around them, then social media, TV, films is the second biggest influencer. Now, half of me thinks we need a soap around AHPs on primetime TV, because that would be a really good way of highlighting people to the diverse roles that we actually have within our professions. We're rarely seen on TV. And if we are seen on TV, normally we're always seen in a bad light. For example, I do remember once an OT being mentioned on Coronation Street who ran off with one of her patients. So totally unprofessional and not in a very good light. So media is where I think young people look up to. These influences become very, very important. And I think we really need to think carefully as an AHP profession, how we influence and how we utilise influencers. Who are the influencers within AHPs? Who do people actually want to see promoting AHP professions? How do we promote to 7-year-olds? Is our material relevant and credible for 7-year-olds as well? And not just to BAME communities, but to having people a fair and equitable chance to access the professions as well. So I think what's really clear is that lots of people, young people, do not get career advice from schools, that it is the external environments that make people. Gender stereotyping occurs very early within careers choice. And I'm now moving on to slide 4. And if you actually think about the most popular jobs that are actually around what people actually want to do, the STEM subjects are very popular to all children, both in deprived and non-deprived areas. And what's really interesting, I think, across all countries, from 7-year-olds, that maths and sciences are viewed very positively, except in 2 countries. And I think that's something as AHPs we can really, really work on, is obviously young people's love of sciences. Now, they very carefully looked at career choices between using the social indicator of free school meals and those who do not have free school meals, which is a very crude indicator. But I think what's really come across to me lately is that I didn't realise that to have free school meals, you have to earn less than £7,000. So that is a very harsh line from a social indicator index. And there's of course many people out there, particularly with the cost of living crisis, that are also should be eligible to free school meals. So whilst drawing caution to that as an indicator, it is an indicator now that's frequently being used to look at disadvantage and non-disadvantage. And you can see the jobs that boys and girls frequently refer to and cite, and unfortunately allied health professions is not there. But again, you can see the types of jobs, the traditional types of jobs between males and female girls, and they're generally the same between whatever your social economic or your background situation actually is within that process. So I wanted us to look at decision making differently and really think about intention to come and train as an allied health care professional. So really thinking about an application of theory of planned behaviour, of thinking about the control factors that actually influence decision making. So can we actually predict behavioural intentions to become an allied healthcare professional? And actually, what actually are those factors? And then what becomes those barriers? So, for example, if you've got a white teenager who is more confident than a BAME teenager, are they more likely then to become an AHP because of that key factor of being confident? Because it spurs on their intention and their motivation. And I think they're the kind of factors that we really need to think about. So looking at some of the evidence from the BAME literature around careers, and there has been work done, and I think particularly work in the US, which of course we can argue is not valid to the UK, but it gives us an idea really about what what's been going on and what's actually been happening and what we've been doing in the UK, and perhaps me hypothesizing already what needs to change. And I think what's really clear is this idea of belonging. And I think Rachel drew on it right from the start. Belonging happens before people apply to be an AHP. And actually what people want to see is people that look like them, sound like them, are like me. The role models become increasingly more important. So diversity, who actually does the recruitment, who actually goes out there and markets the professions, becomes really, really important, I think. And it's not only belonging in the sense of knowing that a university will be able to look after you or will be able to protect you from some of the issues that you may face in professional practice. So it's a too prolonged attack. We may be able to recruit people from diverse backgrounds into profession. Then the question is, of course, is then how do we look after them as well within institutions, within training institutions as well? I think what's really clear from the literature is the limited exposure to allied health professions. And obviously, if we're thinking about people age of 7, it's actually how do we expose people to allied health? And of course, we've seen on the internet, on social media during COVID, of dressing up as your parent. But what happens if your mum and dad ain't from a nice background where one of them is a health and social care professional? There's all sorts of barriers, and I was thinking it's quite, and this may just be me, but it's quite a middle class thing to do, is to dress up like your parent. Thinking about my own background, my dad was a miner, you know, would I dress up as a miner to come actually? And would I be proud? Yes, I am proud of my background. So there's all sorts of value driven elements around dressing up as your parents and being privileged to be surrounded by people with some amazing jobs, etc. And I think what we've really got to think about is actually how we actually do that within career decision making. So it is complicated. What's really clear, I think, if we're going to motivate people to apply and accept the challenge to become an AHP, is that we equip people with the right resources to do that, and we make that easily. And I think we have to revisit really carefully some of the online resources, some of the ways that we do things, some of the ways that we attract people into the profession. And I think what's really clear to me is this idea of self-efficacy. It's about control, what we can control and what we can't control, and what people can control, believe they can control as they enter the health and social care professions. And I looked at the UCAS figures, and I just looked at the UCAS figures for entry into occupational therapy. And what astounded me was that there were 13,000 applicants to occupational therapy for 2,000 people, for 2,000 places. And I'm sure if we look across the 15 professions, we may see similar patterns. So perhaps actually saying that young people aren't interested in AHP professions may not actually be true across the board. We need to carefully look at the existing data that we've actually got within the profession. So this idea of fair balance becomes really, really important, and balance is about your own personal goals. And what's very clear is that people who know what their goals are, who know what they want to achieve, have a better intention and actually have better outcomes. So balance is a really, really important aspect, I think, towards intention to career success, and of course applying to be an allied healthcare professional. But I just wanted to put up here a slide that I forgot about that I think is really important. And for me, I think what the literature is clearly telling us is that we need multi-interventions that are longitudinal. We cannot just go in once. We cannot go in twice. We need to follow up cohorts. We need to, it's a bit like doing an intervention in professional practice. So we need to develop awareness early, which obviously starts perhaps at the age of 6 and 7. We need to look at the evidence base about enrichment activities. So these enrichment activities, particularly from the US, are things like summer schools, summer camps. If you think about what science have done, simulation activities, etc., which happen not just once, but are continuous throughout the process. And I think what then becomes very obvious then is the third part, is the role that universities have in ensuring that young people and mature people, of course, are prepared for university. Now, in brackets, I put something around the EPQ, the Extended Project Qualification. Now, for me, for those who don't know what it is, many sixth formers can do an extended project and can go away and research something. And that is viewed very positively by Russell Group universities and can be used as a marketing tool, not a marketing tool, as a leverage for your grades to be lowered for entry. For me, if I saw somebody who's done an EPQ, I would just want to know about the EPQ because you want to know what they've done, how they've done it. It teaches you how to research. It looks at research methods. It teaches you how to reference. So already some people in some schools already have had the privilege of having advanced skills needed already to help them settle into university. So I think as an academic, as an occupational therapist who loves the allied healthcare professionals, really needs to think quite carefully about how we prepare people for university. What is it that we need to do? I'm also a mother of teenage sons. I also know how bored they get through online learning, through being taught at. So looking at much more imaginative ways. I'm pretty certain that my 16-year-old son, the one that's left at home, wouldn't want a middle-aged mother or person looking like his mother coming in perhaps to do some of this work. So again, it's talking to communities, talking to young people who is best equipped actually to do the career work amongst different communities as well. So I think there's always been a perception that we can do it. Perhaps we can't do it. What I'm really excited about is scoping the literature and particularly looking at the evidence base around the enrichment activities. I've gone very quickly. I have so much to talk to you about, and this is obviously the launch of it. But I can just tell you that we need your help to do this. We can't do it on our own. This is a joint partnership between the BAME community, people from different stakeholders, young people, communities. We need to hear everybody's voice within the process. So I'm just really, really proud that HEE have given the go-ahead for this project. We've got a small amount of money to go ahead and do it, but we really, really need your help to do this. And I'm really, really pleased that my university, London South Bank, through Rachel, are actually really backing this work as well. So I'm now going to hand you over to the most important voices within the process, which is the students.
Anita, before we move on to students, can I ask you a couple of questions from the chat?
You can indeed.
So apologies if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, but we've got Sampada who's asked, I already work at HE as a freelance trainer. How can I join the committee?
Ying, would you like to answer that? I think it's just to sign up onto the onto any of the groups that you're interested in. Is that correct, Ying?
Yes, sign up through the community loop, and then we can engage with you further after that. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
And there's just a
Thank you
second
for wanting
question.
to get involved.
Because I know you've done some additional work around this. Sheila asks, it's interesting information to see that there's 30,000 applicants for 2,000 places. I wonder what the ethnic breakdown of applicants was and what the ethnic background on offer is. Are they proportionate?
The UCAS data is absolutely awful, and that's one of the problems I think as an allied health profession is that we don't collect data, or people are very reluctant to collect data, so that we can do some longitudinal work about it. So perhaps that's something we need to go. What really fascinates me about UCAS is that fifth choice that people can use who want to do medicine. So, and it's been really encouraged that people consider an AHP option if they don't actually get in to do medicine. And I've been really intrigued to know how many people from BAME backgrounds perhaps utilise that as well within that process. I think we need to get hold of that UCAS data because it's kind of winking at me. I'm not sure how we do it, but it'd be really good to set up a working group across the HEIs across London, I think, to look at that data and to start sharing data. I think that's really important as well. And I think what's really clear is this idea of belonging, and that it's not an option for HEIs to say that we can't attract BAME people into our courses. I will not accept that as an excuse anymore. It's certainly not. It's certainly, if you know, you need to look, I think, as Yu Ying said, we need to look at inside ourselves, particularly as HEIs, as to why that may be the case.
Thank you, Anita.